Here we go. Hopefully everybody can hear me. Good evening. It's Tuesday Night Live. So put out the video on the 4200 yesterday. Boy, got a lot of hits yesterday and today. We'll mess around with some of that this evening, and see what happens with that. Everybody's had a good week so far. I don't know if you could tell, but on the week, in the video, we went over to Leo and Terry's on Saturday. They had their annual Inliners Christmas party, so we went over there and had a good little picnic and got to work on there. Sounds good. Video's good. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate that. Learning to check that stuff quickly. Every time you open and close a channel or a scene, it seems to change. So I try to stay on top of that. Yeah. So we got that turbo apart and found that stuff messed up in there. It was pretty crazy. For those that haven't seen the video or maybe didn't watch it all the way through, there was a piece of valve stem from an exhaust valve that had broke back in 2017. Unfortunately, when the engine builders back then were doing the engine, they must not have said anything about the piece missing. Probably figured it just blew out the exhaust or something, but it actually had made its way into the turbine housing, and boy, it did a lot of chaos in there. And hindsight being 2020, it's funny because I got into the program right about that same time. Hey Ryan, good evening. Mike says, have you gotten used to carrying a camera all the time? Actually, and I still don't do a very good job of it. There's so much stuff that I wished I'd get footage of, and when I go back and try to piece the videos together, I'm missing so much stuff. So I got to kind of piece it together. So, but yeah, so that valve stem was crazy. It was in that turbine housing all this time, and I'm assuming that it would drop down and damage the blades and then get thrown back up into the case. I don't know. The weird thing is, when I took the housing off, I'm looking around in there because we noticed there was a lot of rust in there, and I seen this piece that looked like a piece of tubing, and I'm like, what is this? And I would move the housing and it would kind of slide around in there, but yet I couldn't get it to come out. I actually had to take a screwdriver and flick it out the inlet of the T6 flange, and that's when we saw it was actually the piece of valve stem. So that has been in there for quite a while and has done an extreme amount of damage, as you can see in the video. And got a call from Bill up at Bullseye Turbo today, and that wheel has been discontinued. So that turbo is probably from 2004. So he was going to try to hit a bunch of warehouses up and see if somebody may have had one left over, new old stock. See what he says tomorrow. Otherwise, we may have to be replacing the turbo completely. So we'll see how that all works out. But yeah, that was it was great to see that was the situation. I was going over some of the logs, and I don't, again, hindsight 2020. I don't know why we wouldn't have seen that in the first place, but we didn't. And what are you gonna do? We'll get it fixed, and all the pieces of the puzzle should fit in place, and we should get this car to go ripping down the track like it used to, and then we can go ahead and set our new records and stuff. So yeah, you could. I don't know if you guys could tell in the video. I tried to hide it, but there's a bunch. I put a bunch of slides and stuff in there, and talked over some of it because it was pieces missing. Even when we were taking the turbo apart, I put the GoPro on the car to film that, and for whatever reason, it broke it up into segments. So I'm not sure what that was about. And again, I mean, 20 minutes of watching us take the turbo off was probably going to be boring anyway, but I just wanted to film it that way we could, I could find spots and what have you. And then, of course, we get working on get the turbo off and start working on getting the exhaust housing off, which was rusted on pretty hard. We took a lot of effort to get it off. I didn't even have the camera in the right position so you could see any of that. So things still learning in process. It's one of those things, I don't know. and it's funny because I see a lot of the people doing all this with their phones. I just can't seem to get used to doing that with a phone. I'd rather use a camera. But some people have successful YouTubes and all they use is their cell phone. So I guess each person's got their own way of doing it. But sorry about that. Yeah. So I don't know what everybody else had going on this week. We had No Guts, No Glory in Orlando. I did not go. I tried to stay in the shop to get some work done, but I was on the phone quite a bit and on TeamViewer trying to help a couple buddies out with their cars. One guy's new to the Holley system, and they put the car together and put the Holley system in just before going to the event. So they were we had a lot of little things little fires to put out, but we got it going, and he made some good runs down the track, and I haven't got a report yet. Of course, he had to drive back home. I think he's from North Carolina, so didn't get to hear about that, but we'll find that information out for later on, I guess. Yeah, Ryan, it was definitely good to find the issue. We probably talked about this on the live shows over the last couple weeks. There was many different things we were thinking. It was the turbo was never, or at least the damage that was in the turbo was something I never had even thought about. Just one of those things you put that in the folder for future knowledge, because the information or some of the signs were there. Of course, the other thing with this car is we've had two different ECUs, two different engine management systems, and the big stuff that used to be in it really didn't have much of a data logging system. You had to have your laptop plugged in going down the track. I wasn't a big fan of that. And we had a race pack sportsman unit in there. Of course, the sportsman unit is not as robust as a V300 SD system. So we didn't have a lot of sensors. So in the beginnings, we didn't have a lot of data to go by, except for just actual map sensor and RPM and TPS and stuff like that. And when I put the Holley in, of course, I tried to put as much sensors as I could put on the car, because I wanted to be able to get as much data as we could. And it's one thing we can look at. We can go back to the dyno runs back 2 engines ago and see what the back pressure looked like back then. But if I remember correctly, it was even really low or on zero then too. So this issue with the turbine wheel being damaged has been there for quite a while. And hopefully, good thing we were at the track. There's usually nobody around the car when it's going down the track, because all those little chunks of impeller wheel had to go out the exhaust and go somewhere. So, but we never seen any of that. So again, never even thought that would even be an issue. So that's where we're at with that thing. Worked on the Camaro some. We've got that. It's ready to start. I have a water hose and have to put the fluids in it, and I was hoping to get it done for today, but that didn't work out. Mike says it sucks seeing the damage, but now you know it's got to be a load off your mind. Yes, it is. It's bad when you're trying to make the car do something and you can't figure out why it's not doing it. Everything is pointing to where it should be doing it, and it's not. Even when we were doing the anti-lag stuff, I was talking to a couple of friends, and they're like, "Man, what you put in there, it should have been working for sure," and that's what was kind of leading me down the wrong turbine housing and stuff. But look, had I had all the data of all the runs and stuff in front of me, we probably would have known that not to be the case. Because when I got with Leo, when we were going back over all the old runs and stuff, he had the data showing at least time slip and what boost pressures and stuff we could get off the old system. That it was making boost at one time. So, it was pretty wild. And the other thing was that at the end of the dyno run and going down the track, it was making boost then. So it had to be just a matter of the amount of volume and the amount of duration of the exhaust going through the housing that it finally would get it to spool up. So obviously the engine, absorbing as much air as it can get at that point. You're wide open and 7,400 RPM. So that probably took some load off the compressor wheel to actually let it spool up a little bit better. So, it was very interesting. Very interesting. Mike says, I have a hell of a brain teaser at the shop now. Okay. To the point, the field service engineer is involved in scratching his head. Wow. Yeah. Do tell. What's going on with that? I mean, not that I'm probably not going to know anything about these new modern cars, but cool to hear about other people having issues. But we got I got all the battery cables. I actually got the Camaro's powered up now. I put a tune in there. Of course, getting video on that also, so I want to do another Terminator tuning video together in the near future. So all those things kind of drags down time, and had to do a couple things with the car. I pulled the glove box out, and Joe took it to the paint shop because he got some second gen Camaro sport mirrors he's putting on, and so we were able to match up the paint with that. So that's another thing down on the list, and just slow moving. I guess got to get used to it. In my brain, I should be already done and this and that, but it takes time, especially when I'm trying to film and stuff in between. And of course, like last week with the, with helping out guys on TeamViewer and stuff like that. So Mike says he's got a 2.7 turbo 4-cylinder with the goofy cam setup that we talked about a couple weeks ago. Yeah. New engine has a bad cylinder misfire. And we can't figure out why it's going to. On the stupid chats, there's a little box here. It always blocks it. Anyway, so I'm sure, Mike, you guys have already done swap injectors, swap coils. Did all the easy stuff. Compression test. Did you guys do any leak down work at all on it? So, be interesting to see what course of diagnostic your field service guy wants to do too. So sorry about that. I'm waiting to see if he's Mike's got to type stuff in. So anyway, trying to get we're gonna get the Camaro running tomorrow. I'll get some film on that, and then I can start. Of course, it looks like we're supposed to have rain for the next couple of days, so probably not gonna be able to get any mileage on it. But that'll let me get time on the. We'll have to do a shop clean and then get to work on the Chevelle. Start the wiring. Well, I kind of started it preliminary wise, trying to get some video on that because I do want to use that as a wiring video for the future. So we'll see how that works out. I got to go back over all my spots because now it was so long ago that I started. I'm not sure what I have and what I don't have, and the 4200 video I put out yesterday, that took me a couple hours on Sunday and almost all day yesterday to piece that together because it was so much stuff that I thought I had that I didn't, I couldn't find, and had to do a lot of fill in there, and so I had to, write scripts and all this stuff. So that really ate up some important time in the shop. I would have had the Camaro running if I hadn't done that, but I needed to get that out. That was something that we'd been messing with, and it's been a problem on my brain, and I just wanted to get that released and so we can see, everybody can see what's going on with that. I got a lot of comments on there about people were glad to see that we actually showed what was going on with it instead of just, showing the good stuff and not showing the problems and all that stuff. So Mike did answer. He said, swapped injectors, coils, plugs. It idles fine, but misfires under load. We were about to drag out the oscilloscope. Yeah, it's funny. It idles fine. Usually if you had a lean cylinder, it would idle bad. Yeah, you'll have to get the oscilloscope out. Now, does the field engineer, does he have one of those pressure gauges that hook to the oscilloscope that can go down in the cylinder and see the firing? And you said you did. Let's see. You said you swapped injectors, coils, plugs. You didn't do it in. Didn't mention that you did a compression test and or a leak down. That'd be interesting to see how that worked out. Scrap metal sleeper is working on the smart coil setup on my 4200 as we speak. Would love to hear what turbo size is on your 4200 and there are any goals past the record. So on Leo's car, the 4200, it's on the channel. It has a GT 4788 Garrett turbo, and I mentioned earlier the turbine wheel was destroyed, and that part has been discontinued. That turbo was actually sized for this engine for Cunningham. He had a Chevy 2 wagon that he ran the 2005 drag week with, this engine and that turbo setup. And so that's when that turbo was, spec'd out back in 2004. And that turbo, from what I was told by Bill at Bullseye, is that thing's really, on that size cubic inch motor, is really done about 1,300 horsepower. So we were already pretty well maxed out on that thing. So it just depends on where we are, what we can find, because the wastegate was built into the turbine housing, and of course the compressor housing has a V-band on it to hook to the intercooler, and the car is 3 hours away from me, so it would be kind of hard to we'd have to actually go get the car, bring it back here to modify a new turbo to put it on, because my welder and all my fab equipment's here, and then have to go back 3 hours to the West Coast. So the easy thing for right now would be to just put another GT 4788 on it, or if by some luck Bill does find a wheel, he was still hadn't given up on searching that maybe a warehouse might have one in new old stock or something. So we'll see in the next couple of days what goes on with that. But so scrap metal, what do you? I don't know what ECU you're running. We're running a Dominator, and that's what we're doing there. And as far as the goals, so the car's already gone 804 to 170. That was a couple of years ago when the turbo was still in pretty good working order. And so yeah, we're looking for. I realistically would like to see some 760s. That would be kind of where my goal is. That way we would be faster than all the NA comp eliminator dragsters and alters, which those guys are all running at 1,400 pounds, where we're at 2,600 pounds because we're an actual door car. So we'll have to see how that goes. So Steven says the video is great. Thank you, Steven. I appreciate it. Mike says no compression test nor leak down. When I put the engine in, drove it 30 miles, and the truck left for 100 miles, and then started missing, and here we are. Being that you say it idles fine, and you have a misfire at RPM, and the way that valve train is on that engine. I'd be interesting to know if it's maybe a valve train issue. Maybe the valve's opening and closing enough to get the fuel and spark and all, and compression stroke and exhaust stroke all done at low speed, but maybe at higher engine speed, it's not opening the valve enough, and that cylinder then becomes dead. And then so that's something to be interesting. Chris is here. Hey, Chris, how you doing? Did you get your car running yet? Mike says these engines have some history of harness issues because it's pulled so tight around the engine. Yeah, that could be an issue also. I mean, you got pneumatic. That was a pneumatic cam lobe on that, if I remember correctly. So yeah, I mean, you could have an issue there. Yeah, that's going to be a brain teaser for sure. Scrap Metal says he's running a max ECU race. Okay, awesome. I haven't used any of that stuff. All those things work great. As I tell people all the time, all ECUs will fire injector and control timing, and of course the newer ones will do a bunch of other things now, boost control and traction control and all that kind of stuff. The biggest thing I've always thought is the time it takes to get the tune finished. Now, since I started doing Excel DFI back in '95, then the Gen 7 stuff when it came out in 2000, and then when Excel, Mr. Gasket Group, got bought by MSD, which then got bought by Holley, we normally just transitioned into Holley. The reason I like that stuff is I know it. I mean, that's one big thing. But it's, to me, I feel that it's pretty intuitive to the end user. So, I mean, I can have somebody give me some specs on their engine, horsepower, injectors, camshaft, cylinder head, blah, 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 injector, sensors, all that kind of stuff. And I can pretty much write them a tune that the car's going to run. So, that's why I kind of stay with that stuff. And the other thing is most people, how do I put this? So a lot of people that are scared of EFI and they don't want to get involved with it. And me, I don't want to be a tuner where the customer or friend has to have me there to race. So I'm always trying to push the learning side of it to them so that they can do most of the work themselves if they need to do it. You know, and they can do data logs, and of course we have TeamViewer and stuff like that. So again, that's one of the reasons why I usually push the Holley stuff, because I can 2 or 3 little sessions with a friend, they can kind of get a grasp of what's going on. I like to when I'm showing, or if you want to call it teaching, how to use the system, I always relate everything back to a distributor, mechanical advanced distributor, and a carburetor. So I feel that makes it easier to understand what the tables are doing and where you need, you know, if you have an issue, where to look on the map to make that adjustment. So, but yeah, I think the Max ECU is pretty good. I know Calvin, I think Calvin's been playing around with that, so we'll see what happens. Mike says, you're right, it's going to do a compression test and leak down tomorrow before we hook up the scope. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what you see. However, if it does have a valve train issue, you're not going to see that on that. I'm not sure how you could pinpoint the valve train issue, and I guess you'd have to pull the valve cover, pressurize it, and actuate it. But then again, I don't know on the GM ECU if you have enough, if you have a way of sorry about that, brain fart. I don't know if you have a way of activating the without the engine running. So yeah, it's going to be pretty tricky to figure out how you guys are going to come up with that problem. Chris says, no, he doesn't have the engine running. Back ordered in parts. Thanks for asking. Yeah, I don't know why we're still having all these issues with parts. It seems like it gets a little better, then it gets worse again. And in shipping and everything else, you know, as great as Holley is with all their stuff, we've had issues with them. You know, this whole last year, they're wanting us to sell more product, but then when I go on the B2B to order something, there's nothing there. So it's a catch-22. They want me to keep our ordering levels up, but they don't have the components to purchase. So it's an ongoing issue. Hopefully they get things better. I guess time, right? Yeah, so back on the 4200, yeah, Mike definitely, I know the dealers are pulling their hair out with parts availability. My buddy Bill up at Maroney's in the parts department, he's always saying that, you know, oh, that's going to take 6 months to get that, and it's 4 months to get this. And it's like, how can you operate a dealership or a company like that? It's crazy. But hopefully it gets better. I know the last 2 or 3 months, the Dakota Digital dashes have been getting a little better. You know, the beginning of this year, it was a 22 to 28 week wait for a dash. But the last two I got, we were able to get actually in about 4 or 5 weeks. So progress, I hope. I hope next year is going to be a lot better. And we'll see. Interlactic back order, right? Oh, it's crazy. Crazy. So I was going to go over some of this Holley stuff. Let me see. So this is a dyno tune that was on in the 4200 last couple weeks ago, and on the data log. Let me see if this is better. I don't know if that shows up any better with the white background or the black background. I kind of prefer the white. But anyway, so on this graph here, we're are you done with the Camaro? No, Chris, it is ready to fire. I was going to fire it tonight. I have just a couple little things to do. I got to pressurize the engine, with oil before I can spin it over. So, but it's very close. You probably got in late. I was helping a lot of people last week at the No Guts, No Glory race with logging in their ECUs and trying to help them through some issues. So, but yeah, so on this data log here, this was our last run, I believe. Let's see what the RPM was there. Yeah, 7,500. So this was the last dyno run. So you can see here at 4,300 RPM, we only had 99 kPa. So the engine was already at a pretty good RPM there and still hadn't even gotten into boost yet. And then open the throttle up wide open, get to 4,600 RPM, and it just gets to 112 kPa. I mean, that's no boost at all. So that was definitely a telltale. And do I have it on this one? No. I'll go to another tune here. And so same section, and now we're on back pressure, and you can see that the get rid of crankcase pressure. Yeah, there was zero back pressure during the whole entire run. It's right through here in the center. So that should have been a good telltale of what was going on. We go to the run down at the track. I was into a bunch of different files here earlier. Test, run 3, and then we'll open it up. Zero this out for us so we can see what's going on. Dry shaft RPM, yeah, so there's dry shaft RPM right there. Sorry about that. So we'll open up the section where we were going to the track. Now I want to get zero in here. There we go. All right, so now there's zero on the, I did it again. There's a way to get back to that, but yes. Okay, try again. All right, so there's zero. That's where the dry shaft was at zero, so that's how we can tell the car was getting ready to leave the starting line. So if we go back to our sensor gauges, sensor readings here, our turbo back pressure again was zero. You can see here's the map KPA, and it's just not doing anything. So that was that was what finally led me to the bit about the can't see the data log screen. We see you. Oh, sorry about that. I gotta switch the screen. That should be better. Sorry. This software. I'm almost thinking I need two screens so I can do all this stuff. But anyway, so here's the this is the run down at the track, and we have 0 time set stamp. That's where the I can go back because you guys didn't get to see that. So Where's my dry shaft? All right, I lost the dry shaft. There's dry shaft. So here's how I figured out where the car left the starting line, because our dry shaft starts at 0 right there. You can see there's a little ramp up right there. That's because Billy used the trans brake to kind of bump the car into the staging beam. So the trigger on this car has got 16 teeth, so any movement, it'll see it right away. But so that's where we pick up. We can zero our graph, and that tells us where the car started moving. And we go back to our sensors. Now we can see the map KPA, and where the cursor is 115 KPA, so that's like 1.5, 2 pounds of boost. So, and it took a long time before it actually got enough volume of air going through it to where it spooled the turbo up. So those were one of the things that led us to believe that our issue was in the turbo. Another interesting thing I just saw now here is right there. It's 7 seconds in the run. It actually made a 0.02 pounds of boost when the turbo finally spiked. So yeah, that's sometimes you have to look at your data for more than what you're just trying to obviously you're looking at the normal things, but you got to look deeper into it sometimes. Don't have blinders on, so to speak. So a couple things I wanted to kind of show. Here's what we talked about anti-lag, and here's the anti-lag map that I have set up for this car. So the table axis is timing offset versus map pressure. So you can see that, and you can see switch enabled. So this table is only activated when the trans brake is activated, the rev limiter 1, which is the launch RPM, is enabled. So you grab the trans brake and you put the car to the floor, and it's supposed to start building up, supposed to start spooling boost. And as it starts creating boost across the map sensor, here we're actually adding 5 degrees of timing. Now that we know why the car's not working right, it would probably be a negative number. And then we also do the same thing with fuel. So we go ahead and add 12% of fuel. So a lot of fuel going through the exhaust with a timing change on the trans brake, and that's what is supposed to help spool the turbo. Obviously it didn't work, and now we know why. But that's just some of the things you can do with the Holley system. They're pretty easy tables. You can just open them up, select a table axis, and then kind of modify it as you want to go. You've got all kinds of different things for activation and for an enabling. So you can do multiple switches to activate something, or different situations to do it. And they've got simple I/O table, so like you're putting in your sensors and stuff, this all works out pretty easy. As soon as my computer catches up. So yeah, so when you want to put sensors and stuff in, it's as easy as put a name, what the sensor is. Obviously most of this stuff is pressure, so it's 5 volt, temperature thermistor, and then you just go into configure file and set it up. Here's transmission pressure. You go into configure file, and of course we have to wait for the computer, and it's easy as there's a calibration table to set up your pressure sensor, and it's just that easy. So it makes it real easy to get into this stuff. Couple cool things. This is an older system. This is the one that's on Yeah, Mike. No more pulling plugs. So here's a file on the 50 before I got rid of it, and a couple of things. So didn't have a lot of IOs in this one. I was just starting to build a lot of sensors in the car, and then that's when I decided to sell it. So flex fuel sensor and 2 wheel speed sensors, and then a ground switch for traction control. So have a switch on the dash. When it goes to ground, it activates traction control. So let me show you how I did that. So we go back into the 1D tables, and here's how we control our fuel for E85 or for flex fuel. So we build a flex fuel multiplier, and so across this scale here is our amount of ethanol in the fuel from 0 to 100%. And then you modify how much fuel you have to add. So Steve, we're running the I don't have the number right in front of me, but it's a R 4478, I think. Let me see if I got a picture of it. Thought I took a picture of it. I must not have. I will put a comment in the video, would you, Steve? And I'll put it in there. But it's just a copper NGK spark plug, heat range number 8. It really wasn't because of the smart coils. It's just I wanted to get rid of the iridium. Yeah, it's the same plug that Calvin runs. So it's that red box NGK. I could swore I wrote the number down somewhere. Oh, I did. It's R74484-8, and the stock number is 93400. So let me type that in the chat. That way everybody can see it in the future. So R74484-8. Spark plug. Stock. Of course, you need the stock number to order them. All right, so yeah, so that's how we set this up. So we know, at 10%, which is pump fuel, you need about 3% fuel. And from all the back in the days when we used to trick the Excel system, which would not read a flex fuel sensor, we found that 28 to 29% was where we needed to be for E85. And you can see if you go there, we're right at 28.2. So we have I used 3 tables for the flex fuel. So this one is a offset of the wideband sensor. So we want the wideband we have to recalibrate the wideband because it's looking for gas stoic. So we put a little negative in there to help the wideband still read accurately. And then the other thing we do is timing offset. So here, as E85 goes up, the whole timing table gets modified. So that's how we do the flex fuel. I've got, I don't know, almost every Holley system I install, I do the flex fuel. Even if the guys aren't going to run it, at least it's in the car and they can put it in if they want. Now here's something that I did for my car for traction control. So what I did on that car, because we were running autocross, so the car doesn't start off releasing a trans brake and then accelerate through the gears and then stop. We're accelerating, deaccelerating, cornering, sometimes multiple gears depending on the track we go to. So what I did was I created a table. My axis is wheel speed for the front wheel, and the Y axis is wheel speed for the rear wheel. And you can see if you go diagonally through here, that's 120 versus 120, and down here it's 0 versus 0. So that's like the same wheel speed front to back throughout the mile per hour range. And everything on this side, where the front tire is going slower than the rear tire, I didn't do anything. No timing changes. However, when you go over here where the rear tire is going faster than the front tire, did I say that right? When the front tire is going faster than the rear tire, I did nothing. On this side of that diagonal 0 band, when the rear tire is going faster than the front tires, i.e. rear tires are spinning, we start removing timing as we go. So if the front tire is going 40 miles an hour and the rear tire is going 100 miles an hour, so you're spinning the tires really hard, it's taking 13 degrees of timing out of it. And that works pretty good. You can modify these numbers as you want, so you can still have some slip, but not have knock the tires off, out of control stuff. And how I came up with this was interesting. When I first put the Holley in the system, in the car, I went ahead, I had an LS1 in the car. It's got knock sensors, so I hooked it all up in the software. Yes, knock sensors. Yeah, cool. And I didn't have time to dyno the car. We just put it in. We ran around the block, around the shop I was working at, getting a bunch of different throttle levels so that the learning tables would learn. And the car ran pretty good. So we went straight to LS Fest and we're racing. At that time, the car had an automatic in it. And I really didn't have a whole lot of time I think I had 6 miles on it when I got there. But I did notice on Friday and Saturday that the car really didn't have a lot of, I didn't really want to spin the tires too much. Now, this traction control table, I hadn't even done any of this yet. I didn't know anything about this stuff. But I thought it odd, but the converter was pretty loose. So I figured, well, maybe it's just because it's got a loose converter. And then Saturday night, we through the I would run the Grand Champions at LS Fest. So a Grand Champion, you did a multiple 4 different kinds of competitions, and then you accumulated points. It's kind of just like the Optima Ultimate Streetcar Series. So we would do autocross on 2 different tracks. They take your best runs. We would do the power stop on Sunday, and you do a left and right, so they take your best runs. And we do drag. We were able to do a couple of drag race runs. So I ran the car down the drag strip, and this is the run from that event. And then that night, of course, I didn't have time to do any looking at any of the data logging or any of that. And one of the nice things about HP and Dominator Holley is it has built-in data logging. So you can set it up to automatically log, and you just go back and look at it whenever you want to. Something I do on all my customers' cars, I will set up a log at 90% throttle. I want it to run for 60 seconds. And that way, if they say, hey, the car did something goofy, I was running it from a stoplight or something, I can go into the ECU and pull up that data log and see what it did. But anyway, so I pulled up this data log after I ran that event, and I'm looking at this thing and I'm like, what the heck is this is my timing map, and why is the engine only at 9 degrees of timing in it? I know it, if I go back to my timing map, it's got it's a high load, no load. It's in the 50s, it's in the 40s. There's no spot on the entire map that's less than 25 degrees of timing. So what the heck is going on there? Got me scratching my head for a minute. Of course, I wasn't data logging knock, but the one of the fabulous features of the Holley system is when you this is the editing file where you can edit all these things in here that are grayed or white or check marked. All those things, that's every input and every output in the Holley system. When it data logs the entire ECU, and then you go over here and you pick which channels you want to look at, and the channels are highlighted by these green check marks. So going back to the run, I didn't have, so let me get rid of the knock sensor. So I'm just looking at the run like this. I'm like, okay, my fuel pressure's good, you know, steady, that's good. RPMs were good, you know, it got to, 6,000 on the shift. 6,000 on the shift. Went through the traps at 5,100. So the gearing wasn't 100% perfect, but not bad for slapping the car together and going to an event with zero runs on it. And I could see out here that the car had where's my timing? 23 degrees of timing. I'm like, well, it's still not where it's supposed to be, but so thinking about it, I went ahead and check marked the knock sensor, and lo and behold, there's the issue. So when the car was leaving the starting line, for whatever reason, because the knock sensor, the reason was the knock sensors weren't calibrated. It had 15 degrees of retard in it, which knocked the timing back to 10 degrees, 9.8. And as I said, I noticed that on the autocross track, I'm like, wow, the tires are really sticky because this thing won't even spin the tires. Now, of course, I did have 335 3019s on the back of the car, so it had a tire on it, But, and of course, it was a new engine. I never had it was my first LS engine. I didn't know, much about them, so I just kind of thought, oh, that's it is what it is. But it was interesting. So on Sunday morning, I went into the Holley tuning and turned off the knock sensors, and we did the 3S Power Stop competition, which the way they set it up at LS Fest, it's a straight line across the infield of a 3/8 oval track, and then you drive through make a 180, either a left hand or right hand, depending on which lane you're in, a couple of sections of slalom, and stop in a box. Well, with the timing all in and no knock retard, lo and behold, the car spun the entire straightaway with me pedaling the car trying to make it get traction. So a year later, when I started thinking about traction control, I remembered this scenario, and that's how I came up with the retarding the timing to control tire spin. So just, one of those things that really don't mean anything. I just something I wanted to show everybody. It's the nice things with the Holley. You can do all these kind of things. Once I turn the data record off, now the timing map goes into a heat sync, heat color, so you can kind of see where everything's at. And you can see from doing a lot of highway driving, I had no load highway speeds. I had the timing backed out pretty hard, basically the same as what a vacuum advance would do on a old school distributor. It pulls an extra amount of advance to try to get more fuel economy. So you can do the same thing with this. So just one of those things I just thought was interesting, and figured I'd go ahead and show you guys. We go back to the Studebaker. Here's all the sensors I have on here. I wanted to show you Bill's car. So we'll go and find Bill's car here, and we got a couple different things on his. Now we want to see. So on Bill's car, for those guys that don't know, he's got I don't know if it's a 32 or 33 Highboy. three window coupe. It's on the channel. I built a set of wheelie bars for it, and he does drive and drag. Him and his wife do drive and drag events, hot rod drag week and sick week. So it's got a small block with a roots blower on it. We've been chasing some fuel system issues with it, which I do believe we do now have corrected. But I wanted to show you some of the cool stuff we can do with the Holley on his car. So we go to inputs and wait for the computer. Must be because we got the camera rolling at the same time. So on his car, we got trans brake, dry shaft, flex fuel, shift control, because we got air shifted. Gear vendors, I've got a control, so when it's in race mode, the gear vendors cannot come on even if the manual switch is on, in case you forget about it. We got idle surge. That's pretty interesting for the roots blower guys. And then now we actually have pump 1 and pump 2 on his car because he has a new fuel cell. Before, they would have to drain the fuel out of the tank at the track, put the race fuel in, change the blower pulley, race it, and then when they're done racing, put the street pulley back on, drain the race gas out, put the pump gas back in. So it was a bunch of work. So now he's got a larger fuel tank that has a 5-gallon race cell in the middle of the probably 15 or 18 gallon, and then through his dash he can turn the pump 1 and pump 2 on individually. We're not doing it automatically. And that's, if you look here, you can see the cool thing about Holley. You put the trans brake input, well, it tells you it's in connector J1 and pin A2, so or A12, so you know exactly where it's at. And these ones down here that say LCD, those are switches that we actually have on the digital dash. They're it's not an actual switch, it's a virtual switch. It's just a picture of a switch, and you just hit it with your finger on, off, and you can activate this stuff. So that's some pretty cool little things you can do with it. We'll go over to outputs. There's our gear vendor solenoid, transcooler fan, and then our 2 outputs for fuel pump 1, fuel pump 2. Go into our tables. And of course, here's our normal E85 tables. But here's the cool one we do. This is idle surge. So whenever you're running a roots blower, when you if you don't run them pig fat, they'll get an idle surge in them. It seems like the EFI with the IAC control, idle air control bypass, it just gets a lot worse. The computer's trying to fix it, and the IAC is trying to fix the idle, and it just gets crazy. So what I designed here is we want the car to idle right at about 1,300 RPMs, 1,350. And so whenever the engine starts surging, it's going to go high, low, high, low. So every time it goes high, we pull a bunch of timing out. Every time it goes low, we add a bunch of timing. And so with that amount of timing, I can control that surge. So when you go in and out of gear and it wants to start surging, we can just add more retard if it's overshooting. If it's undershooting, we can add more timing, and it works out real well. And we had a switch on the dash so you could turn it off if you wanted to make it. A lot of people like to hear when the blower surge. It's not kind of sounds rowdy and stuff, so some people like that. But anyway, just more different kind of things you can do with the Holley system. On Bill's car, we're running 2 sets of injectors. So he's got 16 injectors in the plate under the hat. Hey John, how you doing? There's 16 injectors, part of the old BDS kit, that sit on top of the blower under the throttle body. So they're I think they're 35 pound, 38 pound injectors. So we tell the computer we're running 88s because it's thinks it's firing 8 injectors. We're firing 16. And then in the manifold below, we're firing 55 pound injectors to help cool the air when you're on it in racing. We can control when we turn that second set on by this duty cycle activation. And so at 18% duty cycle of the top injectors, the bottom injectors automatically turn on. So we don't have to write a specific map for that. I know like on the older systems, Haltech, Electromotive, you would actually have to write the first set of injectors, then you'd have to write a table for the second set of injectors. With this setup, it does it all in the computer does all the math for us. We tell it the duty cycle to turn on, and then it automatically writes the table. So if you look at our base fuel table, it looks like a normal table. You don't see where the injectors are turning on and turning off. The only thing you don't see is up here in the top area, you don't see the injectors going past 100% duty cycle because we have enough fuel going in the motor for that. So again, these are the little things I like about the Holley system is you can get to where you need to go fast. You don't have to do a whole bunch of code writing or table writing. You can just get there real quick. And that being said, a lot of systems will work if we hit the conversion button here. That's the volumetric efficiency table. Some people like tuning by volumetric efficiency. I prefer the base fuel flow, pounds per hour, because I can take somebody tells me that their car is making 500 horsepower, so I can go to my calculator. I guess I could show that on. Let me show that on the screen. Oops, calendar. Don't want calendar, I want calculator. So go to my calculator and I say, okay, so the car makes 500 horsepower. And then we want to multiply it by base specific fuel consumption. So on a NA motor, we can usually figure it's usually 0.45, but I go 0.5 just to get a little extra fuel in there. And you multiply it. So now you know at your peak horsepower point, which would probably, depending on the cam and stuff, just let's say it's 6,000 RPM and it's an NA engine, so it'd be at 103 kPa. You can go to your screen here, 6,000 RPM. Of course, this is a 3-bar table, but right there would be 105 kPa, and we actually have 211 pounds per hour at that point. So this engine is making roughly 500 horsepower NA. Now, of course, it goes into boost. So now let's go. Okay, so we want to figure out boost. So we're going to say, all right, this thing's going to make 1,200 horsepower, and it's boosted, so it's going to be 0.65 brake specific. So 780. So then we would go to our table, 6,000 RPM, and let's just say at 1,200 horsepower point, we're saying at 210 kPa, and look at that, we're right at about 722. So that's why I like the way this system is laid out, because you can mathematically make the fuel map really close. I mean, I usually see the fuel maps I write within 10% from first fire up, just by using those simple methods. Now, of course, if you don't know the horsepower rating, and if you don't have all the information, it's kind of harder to figure that out. But it just makes it easy, and just something I wanted to show you guys. Like I was saying earlier, when we were talking about the Max ECU, and I don't know anything about the Max ECU. I'm not knocking them at all, but all ECU systems do the same thing. They fire the injector, they control timing, and you put the data in to make it do what it needs to do. And I just like the fact that the Holley system has a lot of the engineering already done for you, so you can just do simple math equations and come up with what you want very quickly. See, John Roberts is in tonight. Hey, John, how you doing? So I couldn't find on my computer. I wanted to find a good track run on Bill's car, but I was unable to find one because I most of the time use his laptop when I'm working on his car. So let me just pop in a data log from his car. I don't even know what any of these are. I did not do what I tell everybody else to do. Make files so you can find the runs. So what do we got here? I have no idea what we have here. That's air temp. And that was the car was not running on that data log, so that's not a very good data log to see. Again, I was trying to find a good log. There's a decent log. So there we go. So here we got engine RPM, throttle position, map pressure, and this is kind of what people send me when we're doing drivability issues. So, and this works with all systems, but again, I play with the Holley system the most. A guy gets his car done. I send people files throughout the country, and I'll give them a base tune, and I tell them go out and run it, and then send me a log. So they'll send me the log, and then I can go through here, and I can put on my target AFR and my actual AFR, and then you can kind of get an idea of what's going on. So at this point, map isn't as important as we need. TPS, you always want to see TPS because you've got transients in the background of your fuel table, and this is on all computers. On a carburetor, it would be your accelerator pump. You got like on a Holley, you've got a cam that is a ramp on how much fuel and the volume it puts in, and you've got a nozzle that you control how much fuel you put in. Well, in fuel injection, you've got acceleration enrichment. You got AE on TPS, and you got AE on the map sensor. So it's acceleration enrichment versus the ramp speed of the map sensor and ramp speed of the TPS. So you're basically looking at the same situation called different things. So when I'm doing tuning, though, I want to tune, like here's a good spot because the TPS is fairly common or fairly solid. So that's where you would make your, you look at the actual versus your target, and you make your correction. And again, I'm a simple guy. I like calculator readings. So let's go back here. Our target was 12.7, and the actual was 13.4. So you can take 13.4, and I always do this wrong, but I'm going to try it. 1, 2, 7, 6, and I did it wrong. 13.4 divided by 12.76. So looking at our target, target was 12.7 and the actual was 13.4. We take the actual, divide by the target, and it tells you it's a 5% correction change. So then you can go back to your map table, and let me put the active overlay back on. So here's our cursor. So this is where the cursor was at that spot in the data log. So now we know that we would have to add 5% to these two cells, and that's how we would tune the car. And from that, you don't have to be in front of the car or anything like that. All you have to do is have a clean data log and a clean base table, and you can go to work and get all that controlled. Now all this green squiggly line is all these RPM points through this whole log. So they show you where it was, and as you move the cursor through, it'll move through there. I don't know if we have any on. No, so here's one of the things that Holley does. Let me turn the overlay off. So when they say Holley does self-learning, so when you're steady state driving, again, we can't tune acceleration enrichment fuel with the wideband. That has to be tuned by ear or by feel, just like a carburetor would be. If it's got a flat spot, you got to put fuel in it. Same kind of thing. But when you're doing steady state, the Holley system will actually try to learn what it needs to make the target hit the actual. And so when you put a Holley system in, you drive it around, you allow it to populate this entire graph, and then you transfer it to base and then do it again. You don't want to, every time you start the car, transfer, because as you can see, like right here, it's adding 17%, but yet all around it, it's only adding 2 or 3%. So this could have been a fluke. As you drive it more, it'll blend all those in and get that all where it's all stated. That's why I usually try to get the entire table to be filled in. Now, of course, this car is a blower car, so if we go to our closed loop learning, you can see closed loop down here. We do very little bit of easy adjustment, and what closed loop is the computer's just fixing right now. It's not storing it. Then you go to your learn, and you can see on this car, the learning area is zeroed out. And that's because with the idle surge and being we're running a 3-bar map sensor, and with the blower, the map sensor sees pressure more than it sees vacuum. So you can cloud the learning up. If you leave that active, it'll be all over the place, and the more you drive it, the worse it would run, and that's the reason why. Now out here, when you're wide open throttle and everything's going in one direction, yes, we got it turned on so that if the motor were to get lean, it can add 20% fuel to it to fix it. So those are just a couple little tidbits. See, John says, I have a cold start issue when it's colder. How do you fix that? So you're running, I think you're running a name just lost, the gold box. Anyway, on Holley, I can show you what Holley does. So you've got, for cold start, you got a couple let me get rid of this. For fuel, you got a couple different things. So here's our cold start, first of all. So this is pounds per hour of fuel that's going in on top of the base fuel table per temperature. So like where you're saying when the engine is colder, it's worse. So what you do is you find Megasquirt. That's right. Thank you. I couldn't think of the name. So let's, Florida, we usually see 80 degrees water temp anytime you're going to start the car.
Hi, Landis.
Hi, honey. My wife's home. We see 80 degree temperature usually, or 60 to 80. John says sounds similar to on this Harley. Yeah. But so going back to, if your normal cold start is good, and that would be at this point, what you'd want to do is look at the next cell colder. Now, I'm sure the Megasquirt has a table that's it may look different than this, but it's probably set up the same thing. A percentage of fuel versus coolant temperature. So what you would want to do is, if the motor, cold start is kind of tricky. You got to kind of play with it because your wideband's not going to show anything right away because it's got to heat up. So what I would do is, say I'd go to the next cell, 40, and I'd add 5%. and then the next morning, see what it does. And if it's worse, then I'd go 5% less. Actually, you'd have to go 5% less to go back where you were, and then go 5% less to be leaner. And then the next morning, try again. Now, of course, the fun part about cold start is you only get one shot at it. Even if you let the engine sit for a couple hours, it's still not the same as being cold overnight. So you really you kind of do the cold start one shot at a time. Then you've got a couple different things. So say the car starts no matter what temperature it is, but then it doesn't want to stay running. So that's when you have to look at your after start control. So on Holley, we had after start hold off, which on this motor we're not using any of it because we got plenty of fuel going in it. You got after start enrichment, so you've got another table of how much, and this is a percentage of how much fuel goes in. So if it starts and then dies, I would go to the after start table and play with it there. Same deal. And then if it starts, runs for a little bit, and then kind of gets coughing or choking, then you'd want to go to delay rate, and you'd want to lower your delay rate because the cold start is staying on too long. So let's go back to carburetor. This would be a choke. So your cranking fuel is your choke, butterfly closed, all the way closed. That's how much fuel is being added. And then, with anything that's got a manual choke like your weed eater or lawnmower or anything else, once you start it, you got to ease off that choke a little bit and kind of find that happy spot and kind of keep releasing the choke as the motor warms up. Well, that is your after start enrichment and decay rate. The enrichment is where you actually move the butterfly to the next position, and decay rate is how long does it take till you finally push it all the way off to where the choke isn't on anymore. So that is what your cold start is. You just have to that's what I do. I translate this back to a carburetor. If it was a carburetor, what do I need to do to fix this? If it starts, that means I got the choke shut and it was enough fuel to start. Okay, so crank fuel is fine then. But then I got to play with the choke handle to get it to keep it running. That's when you go into your after starts, and that's where you play with that stuff. So hopefully that makes sense. I'm not familiar with the Mega Squirt, so you gotta kind of go in there and play with it. John Wally says, "How good is the Sniper 2?" Sniper. A lot of these tables are either really close or exactly the same as a Sniper file. The Sniper 1 was a good system. They had 3 problems with the Sniper 1. One, they had a problem with the connectors not staying on the injectors. That was an early issue. I've never had that problem myself, but I've seen people with that problem and stuff. The other thing was the ECU was mounted in the front of the Sniper throttle body, and so on engines with the throttle body with the distributor in the front of the engine, and if your rotor gap to your cap terminals was loose and you had a lot of electromagnetic noise going on in that distributor cap, you would get RFI issues with the Sniper Sniper 1 system. I've fixed that in the past by putting a block of a shield of aluminum in between the Sniper and the distributor, and that problem went away. People had that same issue with other cars, but that usually went back to they didn't wire it as the instructions said. Holley is adamant about the main battery power and ground on all their systems going directly to the battery, not to a bulkhead, not to a power strip, not to the starter stud. And the reason being is they're using the battery to try to absorb as much RFI issues as they can. Now, the Sniper 2, they've put a lot better software or hardware in the ECU circuit, so it's not as sensitive to RFI issues. The only other issue I've found with the Sniper is the throttle lever is a little on the short side, because you got to remember it's a 4-corner carburetor. It's not a 2-barrel progressively in the 4-barrel. It is a 4-barrel all the time, because you have injectors in all 4 barrels, so they have to all work together. People try to put progressive linkages on it. That's not the right way to operate the Sniper. You can make it work. It's a tuning nightmare to make the transition smoothly, but they do make a longer lever, which I install on all the snipers I do, and that fixes the fulcrum of the throttle lever versus the return spring, and that corrects that problem. And what the problem with that would be is when you would be at a stoplight and you would try to ease onto the throttle, it would not go. You'd push a little harder, and then the throttle would snap to maybe say a quarter throttle, and if you got any kind of horsepower at all, you're spinning the tires leaving the stoplight, which is kind of a nuisance, especially if Johnny Law's behind you or something. So, or you're trying to leave your neighborhood on the down low. So that longer arm fixed that issue. So the snipers are a good unit. Just got to remember that it is a price point fuel injection unit. It's made to be affordable, so it doesn't have as much robust stuff to go. So yeah, Johnny, so the best route when the battery's in the trunk, you get 10 gauge wire and you lengthen the wires to the trunk. I do that on every vehicle I do. And of course you're already running a fuel pump wire to the back of the car anyway, so I just put them all in a single trunk harness to the battery and done. Even if you're running a race car with a battery switch, your main battery leads are still going to go directly to the battery and not to your battery kill switch. Now your battery kill switch kills all the power in the car, which there's a red with a white tracer wire that goes to your ignition switch that turns on the ECU. So your battery switch still cuts off the ECU, but the main feed power to the Holley is always hot all the time. So if you're really looking for a robust fuel injection system, I would push you to a Terminator system. They do have the carburetor looking style. I like it for a couple of reasons. One main reason is the ECU is not in the throttle body. It's actually attached to the wiring harness, and you can put it inside the car. I like that a lot better. One thing that Holley did do that's very good is once you get above their sniper, all their other systems, the Terminators, the HP Dominator, they all use the same main J1, J2 harness. So you could put a Terminator car together and then decide down the road you want to make it a race car and you want to have more control. You can take the Terminator out, sell it, and buy a Dominator, plug it right in. You don't have to rewire the car or anything. I think that's a really nice piece that helps out in that situation. Another tidbit on the sniper stuff, and then I'll get done with that. And this goes with the Terminator also. You get a handheld controller with those systems, and you can put in the information, and it'll generate a tune that the car will start up and run. Now, those tunes are made to be heavy on the fuel side because they want to make sure that the end user is not going to have an issue with a lean engine and hurt the engine. So it takes a lot of driving to get that system to learn fully. I prefer to use the laptop control. Now, the Sniper and Terminators, all of them, you can use the laptop software to tune, and it's much faster. That's what I usually will do. I will, if I don't know what the engine is, I'm just doing a quick Sniper install on a 400 horsepower Oldsmobile or Pontiac or a Chevy or whatever. I will use the handheld, let it generate the tune, but then I unplug it and I plug my laptop in and then fix it, because all your timing tables and your AFR tables are 2D or what they call simple. So there's a idle AFR, a wide open AFR, and a cruise AFR, and that's it. And there's no balance. So if you want like a 14.0 idle, and you want 14.7 at cruise, and you want 12.5 at wide open, it's going to be like a switch. It's going to switch back and forth between those. Same with the timing. You have to go in with the laptop, and then you can make an actual 2D table like like I've been showing you now, and then you can control all that stuff. Right. So just what Mike was saying. He did a 58 GMC pickup with a small block Chevy in it, and it had it. He put a sniper on it, and he used the handheld to control the tune. And when you do that, typically, like I normally will see the idling fueling will be 50% over what the engine needs. And so it takes a long time to get that to come into play. One thing I've noticed is, like they say, it'll say cubic inch, and it'll say camshaft, and it'll say street strip, race. And everybody wants to put street strip. Well, really, if it's under 500 horsepower, I would call it a street cam. And that usually gets the VE table a lot, or the base fuel table a lot closer. But, Holley's trying to make sure nobody has a problem with an engine going lean and damaging it. So all their tunes throw a lot of fuel and a lot of acceleration fuel. And you got to tune all that stuff out to get the car to really run nice. So it will work, but it takes some time. We were talking about acceleration enrichment before. Let me just show you that real quick. So these first two things, AE versus TPS rate of change, and AE versus MAP rate of change, basically you can consider these your accelerator cam on a Holley carburetor. TPS rate of change would be the nose of that cam, and the MAP rate of change would be closer to a power valve, but the ending of the ramp. So this is the rate of change, percentage of seconds, percentage of change per second in a 10 times table. So that's 7% in 1 second is what that's telling you right here at this point. And that's how many pounds per hour of fuel you're going to put in. Now, on like a Sniper or a Terminator base tune that you get from Holley, this 38, this thing will be a big, huge graph way up here, just throwing a ton of fuel at the engine. It doesn't need that. It's not going to hurt anything except for your fuel mileage. But they did that so you're not going to have a hiccup. It's not going to have lean spots. That's why they do that. So, again, these are something that I tune automatically. This is supercharged, so it's got a lot more fuel in it. A non-supercharged engine would be way down here at the bottom of the scale, almost no fuel at all, because it just doesn't need much fuel to go into the engine. Then we have a couple of things that we can control because it's electronic fuel injection. You got TPS versus coolant temp. So as the coolant temperature changes, we can change the rate to make it more is for more economy. Same thing with the map. This is an unusual one. Most ECUs I've seen do not have this. This is AE correction, acceleration enrichment correction, versus TPS. So what this is it's a model of the volume of air moving through the throttle body. So I had issues back in the day when I used to do OEM tuning on like SCT for Fords or HP for GM products, and a guy would put one of them big oval 100 plus millimeter supercharger blades on the engine. Now those ECUs were already calibrated from the factory for their little round 90 millimeter throttle body, and so there was a correction of this in the background, but you couldn't get to it. Holley gives this to you, so if you have a funky shaped throttle body where you just have a weird tip-in issue that you can't correct, you can go in here. When you're doing progressive throttle bodies, you're tuning it in here. This crossover point gets moved around to different points. On this this particular car, it's got a big and ugly, big 3-blade throttle body on it, so that it wasn't too much tuning to do that. But those are the things you would do for those different settings. So typically, what I tell everybody is when you get a good start file, don't play with any of these tables, cold start, acceleration enrichment, any of that stuff, until you have your base fuel table tuned properly. So let me get back over here. So reason I say that is that your base fuel table is basically your idle jet, your main jet, your power valve. Those are all different quadrants of the fuel table. You have to have that all tuned properly, because all of these tables that I've showed you are an adder to that table. So if your table is not right, they're not going to be right. And if you start going in there and doing a bunch of modifications before you have your table right, because you're trying to fix cold start right now, you end up really getting yourself into a pickle, because as you get the engine, your base table set, well, then all of a sudden your cold start's getting messed up again. Then you're like, well, maybe that adjustment wasn't the right adjustment, and you can make yourself go into circles with the tuning. So that's one key thing, and this is with all fuel injection systems. It doesn't matter who it is, what it is, whether it's self-learning, not self-learning, it doesn't matter. All of those tables are adder tables to the base fuel table. So you always have to get your base fuel table correct first. And that goes back to what I was saying much earlier in the show, is all ECUs will fire the injectors and change, manipulate timing. It just depends on what it takes to get to the end and the final product. And that's the differences in all these ECUs. There's a lot of ECUs out there that are basically blank canvases. You can do all kinds of things with it. That max ECU, I remember vaguely from one of Calvin's videos that he was able to, work with VVT and all that stuff. But a lot of that stuff isn't already made for you. You have to go in there and make it. So first, it takes a good understanding of what you're trying to accomplish, and then, of course, it takes the time to do it. Back in the day when I used to do a lot of tuning in my shop I had in Boca, where we had a chassis dyno, back then I was not as experienced as I am now, and I would go ahead and attempt to tune anybody's ECU. Bring it in, bring me a handbook or some instructions, and give me a copy of the software. Let me look over it a night or two, and then bring the car in, and I'd go to tune it. And let me tell you, some of the early electromotive stuff, F2As and stuff, I mean, I had a Porsche one time. I think I had 40 hours in tuning time in that thing, because it was very simplistic system, and of course it was DOS based, but that's neither here nor there. But you actually had to write everything. So it took a long time to get all those things done. Yeah, the system was fairly inexpensive to buy, and it looked pretty, it had one board, and it had the coils and everything all on one board, and it was, small and compact and all that stuff. But, I mean, 40 hours of tuning time, where was the savings in that? And, of course, I wasn't even able to charge for all that. So it cost me a bunch of time and money, too. That's the biggest thing. When I used to do the Excel DFI stuff, I could write a base tune, and I'd go on the dyno, and we do road simulation and wide open throttle, because there was no self-learning in that system. I could have those tuned in about 2 hours, and then the next day come in and do a cold start tune, because now my base fuel tables are all done. Now I'll do my cold start and acceleration enrichment once the motor warms up, and I'm done. Give it to the customer, good to go. and I could do those in 2 to 3 hours. So that wasn't a big expense. We would add $500 for dyno time and tuning time, and we'd write the tune and get it done. Then you fast forward to when I put the HP in my 50 Chevy in 2017. I put the system in. They have a directory of pre-written tunes. I put the tune in from LS1. I changed the injectors to my injector size. Made sure the map sensor and the coolant sensors, all those sensors were identified as the proper sensors. And I drove the car around the block for 6 miles and went to a race and raced the whole weekend. Never been on a dyno. In fact, that car didn't go on a dyno for almost 6 months after I got it running. So, that's where the cost savings and or differences of different systems is what it takes to get from A to B. So that's it. Every system is good. I'm not knocking anybody's. And for the end user that's going to tune his own car and has the ability, go for it. There's nothing wrong with that. Especially when it's your own time. If it takes you 40, 50 hours to get the car running properly, who cares? I mean, it's maybe a little aggravating, but it didn't cost you any money. So, at that point, I get it. But for me, I can do the Holley stuff. I can sell somebody a Holley system, send it to them. I have a tuning sheet that I send them for them, the questionnaire. They answer all the stuff. I'll write the tune. I send it to them. They put it in and drive the car. It's done. They can, if they find a spot of issue, they can do a datalog. Send me a datalog. I can fix it in 5 minutes, and it's done. So those are the beauty to me. What makes it worthwhile for me to use the Holley system. So I'll get off my soapbox about that. East Sheet Metal Garage says, sorry late, Xmas concert. Yeah, no problem. I appreciate everybody coming out tonight. The wife is home, so I will probably wrap this up. Next week, we'll go ahead and I'll show you the Terminator process on the Camaro. I'll be starting tomorrow, and we'll get that going. And I'll let you know what's going on with the 4200 turbo. Hopefully, fingers crossed, Bill at Bullseye can find me a new old stock turbine wheel. Otherwise, we have to make, Leo's going to have to make a hard decision on what to do. If we can't get a turbine wheel, I see it right now, his options are find a new old stock Garrett turbo that's a 4788 to transfer his turbine housing onto and his compressor housing so it bolts into the car. But that's going to be probably $1,800. Or do you just go ahead and bite the bullet and buy like a Bullseye turbo with upgraded impeller wheels and new sizing? We already know that the 4788 is a tick on the small side for what we're trying to achieve with the car. So it's going to be, I guess it's going to be interesting which way we end up going with this thing. I mean, if we can get a wheel, for a couple $100 and Bill can put it in and balance it and get us all set back up and we can get it back together for under $1,000, that's a no-brainer. But to buy a whole brand new turbo and not buy the correct one, to me sounds like a waste of money and time. So we'll see. I'll let everybody know on the live next week what's going on with that. I'll have a running video on the Camaro finally, yay, and give you guys updates on anything else that comes up through the week. We won't be going anywhere on Saturday, so we'll have a full week of work between now and next Tuesday. So should have some good information to update everybody on. I hope everybody at home is getting their projects done. Mike's got a big mess on that at 2.7. Good luck with that. At least you're getting, well, I don't know how the dealership works for you on diag time, but hopefully you're getting paid for all that mess. And Bill's watching the weather closely. We're hoping to go to test his car in Orlando pre-sick week. Now we have the new fuel system done. So if we do get to do that, I will show you some data logs on that, because we'll be able to go, and I'll try to get one of the old data logs out of his computer so I can show what that fuel system was doing and what we were running into. Hopefully Chris is getting the parts for his car. It'd be really cool to see that car back on the track. And hope everybody has a good week, and we'll see what happens. And I guess with that, we'll everybody have a great week.